So today we have an exciting update from 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, who's going to talk to us all about GraphCast. So 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, without spoiling too much, fire away.
Hello everyone, hopefully my sound is all right, and I'm gonna share my screen like that. And just to let you know, I'm not gonna be able to see the chat, but yeah, I can go through the chat after we're done with the slides. So yeah, I have some pretty brief slides for you today, and then I'm gonna show a bit of a live demo for everything that we've been working on GraphCast for the last few months. I saw that the last time that we did a demo on 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗧 was at the end of March, so obviously a lot of things have happened since then. I've put links to resources and also our docs at the end here, and I will share the slides so that you can also check the docs where we have everything that is new. So yeah, hopefully you can see this well. So just as a refresher, although it wasn't that long ago, so I'm sure you probably haven't forgotten everything about GraphCast, but GraphCast is a decentralized and distributed peer-to-peer communication tool that leverages a gossip network to allow network participants to exchange information with one another in real time. And you might have noticed that before our headline was allowing indexers to share information in real time, but now it's network participants because we're slowly opening the door for more than just indexers, like subgraph developers being the one that's next, and later on maybe we'll add even more use cases. But so in general, the problem that GraphCast solves is that currently all of the communication that can be automated, well, not all, but most of it happens on chain, and as we know, that costs gas, so it's not very efficient, and it adds a minimal kind of barrier to communication, basically. But with GraphCast, which is off-chain, that kind of eliminates that, and the cost of communication is near free. So this is the setup that we basically have. We have the GraphCast SDK, which is sort of the base layer that radios use to build on top of it. And a radio is just a application that has a specific that has like a specific function, like the POI radio is is a radio. The reason it has a star on it is we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, as you can see, using the GraphCast SDK, we've built the POI radio to allow indexers to cross-check and compare POIs between themselves and be notified at the exact moment where there's a divergence. We also have 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, which is a network radio, which can be used to monitor traffic and messages along pretty much all of the GraphCast radios. We also have a new one-shot CLI. It's mostly something that we use internally, but it can be used by everyone, and it allows sending one-off messages to a given topic, so for a given radio. But of course, all of the information regarding 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, one-shot CLI and everything else is in the docs, so definitely check that out. I'm just going over things very briefly. So here is the POI radio, and then all of the other radios that are going to be built in the future. Now, the reason that POI radio has a star on it is because POI radio is dead. Don't freak out. POI radio is evolving. It has been rebranded to the subgraph radio. So long live the subgraph radio. And the reason for this rebrand is because currently POI radio surfaces data from a wide range of software. So when you run POI radio, it uses your local graph node. It obviously makes calls to the network subgraph and all of that while it's doing its thing. So it really has a lot of data available, and it's a shame to use all of that data only for cross-checking POIs. So before, we kind of thought that the POI radio is its own radio, and then for different use cases for GraphCast, we can have their own separate radios as well. But it actually makes a lot more sense to rebrand POI radio into a subgraph radio and have functionalities within subgraph radio. So the POI cross-checking functionality is obviously still there. It is central to subgraph radio, but alongside it, there can live a wide range of different functionalities, like a subgraph versioning functionality that we've briefly spoken about in previous sessions, a warp syncing functionality, and all of these different functionalities that can work while someone is running subgraph radio. So they don't need to run all of these different radios alongside each other. It can just be one. Of course, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have more radios, but for things that can be done with the data that's in subgraph radio, it's better for them to be functionalities rather than separate radios. I just want to say that from a user experience perspective, it's really straightforward to migrate from POI radio to subgraph radio. Essentially, it's mostly just been rebranded. So if you check our docs, the installation process is pretty much the same as it was for POI radio. It's still it still comes as a Docker image. You can build the Docker image locally as well. You can get one of our pre-built binaries from the repo, pretty much the same way as you would use POI radio until now. You can use subgraph radio. And now we can talk about some other interesting developments that have happened since last time. So as you might have known, until now, the only way to participate in POI radio was to register a GraphCast ID at our registry smart contract. But now that's no longer a strict requirement. So it's still highly recommended because it adds another layer of security if you use your GraphCast ID instead of your indexer operator address. But if you want to use your indexer operator address and don't want to register with the registry smart contract, you can do that. Now there's a new config variable ID validation that basically lets users choose, and this is important, it lets users choose what messages to validate. So for instance, if I run subgraph radio and I'm not registered at the GraphCast registry, and I send messages, the other participants can choose if they validate my messages, because again, like if you're running subgraph radio and you only want to validate and care about messages that are coming from people that have registered with the GraphCast registry, you will have your ID validation as registered indexer, how it was until now. Pretty much that was the requirement. But a lot of people are going to just want to use their indexer operator address instead of registering a GraphCast ID. So you can also open up your own subgraph radio to be able to validate messages from those people. And just quickly on the other ones, and this pretty much these are not all relevant for subgraph radio, because this validation happens at the GraphCast SDK level. So I guess for subgraph radio, indexer is valuable and registered indexer, but the SDK also supports a no check, so you can validate messages from pretty much all of the messages that come in get validated. You can set valid address, which only validates messages from valid ETH addresses. Graph network accounts, so only accounts that are graph accounts from the network subgraph. And also GraphCast registered. So right now, GraphCast registered and registered indexer are more or less the same, but in the future we plan on supporting multiple registries. And I don't want to get too deep into that, but if someone is registered in the registry but not a indexer, you can still validate messages from that address. And again, all of this is covered a lot better in the docs. A few other improvements include notification improvements, because I think the last time I was here, we only supported Slack notifications. Currently, we have Slack, Discord, and Telegram, and setting all of that is very, very simple. All of those support bot tokens, so you only need to supply your bot token, and in some cases specify the channel where you want the notifications to be sent to, and you're all set. We also welcome ideas for more notification platforms. So that can be an email or maybe Prometheus alerts. But of course, we will listen to the community. And another kind of important improvement is we now have a server that is running as part of the subgraph radio if you enable it, and it has a GraphQL API that you can use to fetch all of this information from the radio, like for instance validated messages, your local attestations, so all of the public POIs from the subgraphs that you're allocating to, or when we will see that in action during the demo. As I said, I will link all of these things later. So now let's actually go into the demo. So I think last time I shared the initial kind of draft for the Grafana dashboard, and I really wanted to keep things simple. So here we are running subgraph radio on a indexer that only cares about one subgraph. And let me just refresh to get the latest data. So the comparison result is 1 because we are currently comparing one subgraph with other participants in the network. This is the average messages that we've received in the last 30 seconds. And I guess this is the most important part, right? Where you have the latest block number where you've compared your own public POI, and you have a sender and stake ratio. So you see how many people are backing that public POI, and it has a little star here, which means that we are a part of that group. So our POI is not divergent. It is still in the consensus. And we have the total stake that is backing that public POI. Here, there's also interesting bits where you can see how many other network participants you are connected to. So right now it's 2. So this number is without it's not considering ourselves. So it's us plus 2 more indexers that we're actively comparing with. Here you have your local POIs. And here you have a number of diverged subgraphs, which obviously right now there's full consensus, so it's 0. But I did force a divergence a bit earlier. So if we open this up and we do like 12 hours, we see that at this point there was 1 divergence. So I think that's pretty much all there is to the dashboard. Of course, when you have multiple subgraphs, it's going to look a lot busier, but I really wanted to convey the most simple form of this. So the other big thing that I mentioned is the GraphQL API. So by the way, this is the subgraph radio instance running, which the logs aren't going to tell us much, but with the Grafana dashboard and this GraphQL API, we can pretty much get all we need. So, but this is also pretty useful. So you have your own health endpoint that you can use to see pretty much if your subgraph radio is alive. And using the GraphQL API is pretty neat because we can see the messages that we are storing, which is a lot. It's going to be a lot more if you have a lot of subgraphs. I'm going to comment that out because it's a lot. But it's pretty much everything. You can see when they've been sent, the sender's signature and all of that. You can also check your local attestations, which is also pretty nice. So you have, pretty much the subgraphs that you care about with their public POIs and with the block of those, a lot of that POI. what else? You can, and this is really useful. At any point, you can see the comparison results. So of course, right now we are matching with two other public POIs that we've received. And the last one is the comparison ratio, but that's pretty much the thing that you see here in this neat way. So yeah, those are just two ways where you can really you can have a live view of what's happening within subgraph radio, which is pretty cool. And just on the notifications bit, we've made them less spammy, but I think there's still more work to do, but this is kind of how they look like. And if we see, we did have a divergent one today. So this is what you will see if your POI diverges from the consensus POI. And yeah, I think that's all there is to the demo. So yeah, we can jump into a Q&A section.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Petko. There's been a lot of chat in the comments, so maybe it might be worth having a look at those in case there are any questions that haven't been answered. I know that Chris and Hope have been going through some of the questions and answering, but also anyone who wants to shout out any questions, far away.
Let's deal with the chat. I think most of the questions are there.
Alrighty, let's see if we got any outstanding ones. I might be missing something, but oh, here we are. There's one right here. Is there any updates about transition tools to Arbitrum? I don't think that's particularly related to this, but maybe it is. I'm not sure.
I think that one's for the migration helpers.
Yeah.
I think the main question would be like, how can we increase the number of participants for the radio? Because for now it's only around 6 indexers, I guess.
That's a very good question, and I really hope that now that we've lifted this requirement for a GraphCast ID, it's going to get a lot easier. For instance, we can add it to the full version of 𝗨𝘀𝗀𝗳𝗂 stack, so that the subgraph radio runs by default when someone's running the full stack, because now they don't need to take this additional step of registering at the registry. They can just use their indexer operator to be a part of subgraph radio. I saw Savin's comment about bundling it into the agent, but we're still trying to keep it not that required.
And as we can see that you have a Grafana dashboard, but what about something like similar to POI that indexer just can take a look and check its own POI with the comparison to other POIs of other indexers? Because for now it's just doing some work, but how can it affect the daily routine of indexers?
I think that's a good time to plug the graphics tool. I think like these two will work really well in tandem, and we're going to be hosting a dashboard for graphics that'll allow you to search by your indexer per subgraph and show a layout of all of the various POIs and how many other indexers you agree with.
Yeah, that would be great, because for now, I think most of the indexers are trying to use tools like POI and just check if their activities are correct with in a line with other indexers, but with POI radio and subgraph radio, excuse me, and there is no way just to check it really for now.
Yeah, I mean, you can also use in the indexer agent, there's the potential dispute monitoring that looks at other POIs on chain, but it's only looking at things on chain, so it's pretty sparse comparison. But I do use that sometimes to see how many other indexers agree with my indexer.
I don't think that I use it, but is it something that we can set up in the agent so we can just use it before agent will use it before submitting POI, or how will it work?
The agent doesn't automatically use it for decisions yet, but basically, if you turn it on using just a flag in the agent, I'll grab that startup command and put it into the chat here. Your agent will, for any subgraphs you have synced, it'll look if there's any POIs on chain. It'll compare those with your indexer's POIs, and then it'll store in a database table whether or not you agreed with that other indexer. There's an indexer CLI command to grab those and query them. You can also look directly at the SQL table and do SQL queries to kind of do counts of indexers you agree with and stuff like that. So one thing I use that for is like I'll look at like the percentage of indexers that agree with me by using a SQL query. I think it's going to be better to use graphics in the future since the plan is to have a hosted dashboard that everyone can just look at and you can just click on your indexer and then see data. But we do have that current setup that allows you to look in your database to see differences that are on chain.
Yeah, because that one sounds very heavy.
It does definitely add some work for your indexer agent because it'll be constantly kind of looking for those.
All right. I see a question here from Anna, but it's related to MIP scoring. Could you ping Pedro to see hit the DM? Okay, cool. I will reach out to Pedro to see if he can follow up on that. And then Ford is sharing some additional resources. Cool.
Nice. Also, Chris was posting in the chat that you indeed can use some of the views from the POI radio, it looks like, to see how many other indexers you agree with. Of course, there's the obvious limitation of how many indexers are actually using that.
Let's see a few people typing. Yeah, I can see there's responses that are being written for the questions in the chat. Let's see. It's a good point, Vince. Any additional questions or thoughts on this particular topic? Also, if anyone on the GraphOps team, Chris or Hope, want to come onto the mic and maybe share some additional context, feel free to. Also, Petko as well. Indeed, Vincent, indeed. Well, great. Hope's asked the question for the group. Would anyone like gossip deployment health messages?
Can I just chime in? I'm gonna post this in the chat. This is a feedback, suggestions, and questions issue. So anyone that has any feedback, suggestions, and questions, or really anything at all, feel free to post it there or in the GraphCast channel here in Discord. We are planning on doing a open discussion at maybe one of the next IOH sessions so that we can really see what kind of functionalities for subgraph radio would be the most valuable and beneficial to the community. So yeah, all of the feedback and ideas for that will be greatly appreciated.
That is a great prompt, Derek. Really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was saying it was Mickey's. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. It is Mickey, correct? I've only seen it written, so I haven't heard anyone pronounce it.
I
Yep.
believe so. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean she gets credit for that one.
What do you mean by communicate on pinned manifest files?
So like when someone goes to
indicate they have them available, or
yeah, so when someone goes to deploy a subgraph, that's going to deploy the manifest to the graph's IPFS. I don't know if you'd call that a node or where exactly. And so then when we want to go start syncing that, then we go and send a request out to that node, right? And so one of the things that we were discussing is if we were to decentralize that a little bit to where different indexers can be running their own IPFS nodes and then sharing file locations or however that works inside IPFS. It's not my specialty. And that way, attempting to decentralize that aspect of the network.
Yeah, 100%. I think that would be really valuable. It's something I've definitely been thinking about for a while. I think there's some, for sure, research required to make sure that we can do that in a robust way and make sure that the IPFS hash tables that are shared in the peering is effective enough so that we could kind of remove reliance of our centralized IPFS gateway and rely directly for indexers IPFS. But I'm fully on board that project. It hasn't been resourced yet at ENN, but if anyone else wanted to work on that, I would support that and be down to help out. I'm all for kind of removing any centralized brittleness on the network. IPFS has definitely been one that's been there for a while. It's been a little bit difficult to maintain sometimes. I hear with like some of the later versions of IPFS, the peering is much better, and you can kind of configure it in a more persistent way so it maintains bootstrapping peers. Where in the past sometimes you would lose those. So it might actually work pretty well out of the box now with the new IPFS client.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the improvements because IPFS has been hacking away for a while and been hit or miss in my opinion. Yeah, Chris asked a question, which I guess can be directed to the ENN folks. Any thoughts there?
I believe we updated the IPFS client recently, but I don't know exactly what version we're using right now, Chris.
All right, we are coming to the final 10 minutes of today's conversation. So do want to field for more questions in relation to all that was discussed as relates to GraphCast. So keep firing away. But then I also want to open up the space for how what we usually do, which is our general open discussion on various topics. So if there's anything that people want to discuss, questions that they have, this is a fantastic place to do it, where you have various indexes all working hard and doing similar things. So yeah, if you have any questions or queries, this is the best place to ask them. I think you had some questions earlier in relation to sharding stake machine, right?
Which one?
You mentioned that you were having some sharding issues, and I think Payne said he would. I think Hacker mentioned that
Yeah,
Payne thinking about doing some workshops there.
no, I mean, I think that Paka said that he will cover it somehow.
Sorry, what was that? I missed that.
I think Paka said that he will cover it in the docs or somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Okay. I can see some. Okay. Cool. Sounds good.
Another interest lies around indexer agent multi-networking. So, but we have some progress with Tiago, I think. But more indexers will test it. It would be much better.
Agreed. Oh, that's a great question that I'm curious to hear people's perspectives on. Anybody interested in indexer agent multi-network? See Vincent typing. I believe. Yeah, it's Stake machine mentioned. I can see Thiago's here. If you have any comments on this, Thiago, you're welcome to mention. Contribute. I can see you've come off mute, but we can't seem to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right. We are trimming all the edges, making sure it's a seamless transition for all indexers. We're still writing some migration guides and explaining how the agent operation will change and how some indexer CLI commands will also change. But yeah, Stake Machine and Payne are helping a lot by trying out and testing and sending bug reports. But we don't have a release date yet. But it's soon. It's soon. Yeah, it's mostly done.
Amazing. And I believe when things are locked in, we will have an IOH discussion on this. So very much looking forward to that. Which guides are you referring to, Alex, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, if it's the migration guides I'm referring to, it will be included in the release page. It will be a page just where we will describe like what are the expected changes and new configuration features. Yeah, we are aware this will not be like just a regular bug fix release, but we will include everything in the release notes.
There you have it. I hope that answers your question, Alex. Thank you, 𝗨𝗂. All right, we are coming into the final 2 minutes of today's conversation. If there are any additional thoughts, questions, topics that people would like to discuss, fire away. Otherwise, I will take this opportunity, and please stop me if there are any topics that people want to discuss. Otherwise, I will take this opportunity to wrap today's conversation and thank every single one of you for joining today, and for 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗃 for explaining everything there is about the update to GraphCast. And as he's mentioned, there are various links that have been shared. If you have any feedback, please do add it there into this issue. I'm just going to repost just so many of you folks have access there. And very much looking forward to the discussion with 𝗨𝗪𝗀 coming up very shortly. It's been a pleasure talking with all of you. Thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing you again, same time next week, where we will have various discussions in relation to all the topics that you guys want to talk about. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your days. Thanks, everyone. Bye.